A single dad can't afford this. Dealer laughed. He paid cash for the whole lot. They laughed when Marcus Cole walked through the door. Not loudly. That would have been too honest. It was the quieter kind, traded in sideways glances and pressed together lips. The kind of laugh that makes someone feel invisible without making a sound. Bradley Harmon, floor manager of Harmon Prestige Auto, 12 years in luxury sales, 42 years old, a framed top 1% in the region plaque behind his glass desk, watched the man in the worn Carhartt jacket stop at the entrance and look around. Bradley leaned over to Derek Weston, his senior salesperson, and murmured something. Derek covered his mouth. Single dad energy, Bradley said, just loud enough for the front desk receptionist, Claire, to hear. Probably here to kick the tires on something he saw in a magazine. Marcus stood there for a moment, holding his 7-year-old daughter Zoe's hand. Her sneaker had a crack in the sole, Claire noticed. Felt something twist in her chest. Marcus's jacket had a frayed right cuff. He looked like someone who measured twice before spending once. He looked like someone who knew the cost of everything. What Bradley Harmon didn't know was that Marcus Cole had spent the last 18 months quietly liquidating a software company he'd built from nothing, and that the wire transfers sitting in his account would make the entire Harmon Prestige Auto inventory look like a rounding error. What none of them knew was that by the time that Saturday afternoon was over, Marcus wouldn't just be buying a car. And Bradley Harmon's top 1% in the region days would be running on borrowed time. But for now, Marcus just looked down at Zoe and said, "Okay, Bug, let's find something good." He hadn't planned on coming here. The morning hadn't started with any of it. 5:15 a.m., the alarm Marcus never needed. He was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table in the dark, coffee growing cold beside him, looking at a piece of paper folded and unfolded so many times the creases had gone soft. The pediatric specialist's estimate. The follow-up appointment date in 3 weeks. The column of numbers that would determine how much of Zoe's treatment they could cover without touching what he'd set aside for her college. He folded it again, put it in his shirt pocket, pressed his hand flat against it once, a habit, not a prayer, and stood up. He could hear her moving upstairs. Zoe always woke up like a small sunrise, slow and certain. The sound of her feet padding down the hall, her door creaking the way it always did because he kept meaning to fix the hinge and never quite got to it. "Daddy." She appeared at the top of the stairs in her pajamas, the ones with the faded yellow stars, holding the stuffed rabbit she'd named Gerald. "You made coffee. I did. Can I have some?" "You cannot." "What if I just smelled it?" "You can smell it." She came downstairs and sat across from him, pressing her nose dramatically toward his mug. He watched her, 7 years old, and sometimes he couldn't look at her without feeling something enormous he didn't have a word for. Her mother had been gone for 2 years. Zoe still asked about her at odd moments, at the grocery store, in the middle of dinner, during a cartoon. Not with grief anymore, mostly with a child's honest curiosity about how the world worked. He was grateful for that. He answered every question straight. "Can we do something today?" she asked, pulling back from the mug. "What do you want to do?" She thought about it with the seriousness of a diplomat. "I want to see the fancy cars." He looked at her. She'd seen the dealership on the drive to school, its lot full of silver and black vehicles that caught the light. Had mentioned it twice in passing, the way kids mention things they don't actually expect to get. He thought about the paper in his pocket. Thought about the wire transfer. Thought about how long he'd been careful, economical, invisible, and how none of that had made Zoe's life easier in the ways that actually counted. "Okay," he said. "Let's go see the fancy cars." She looked up, delighted, not quite believing him. He meant it. What Marcus also hadn't mentioned to Zoe, to anyone, was the reason for the wire transfer. 18 months ago, he'd sold Caliber Systems, the logistics software company he'd built over 9 years in a spare bedroom while Zoe slept, to a larger competitor for a number that would have seemed impossible to him at 30. He hadn't told his neighbors. He hadn't told anyone from his old sales job at the hardware distribution company, where he'd worked nights while the software grew. He'd paid off his house, set aside Zoe's college fund, and then just kept living the same way. Because the same way was good. Because Carhartt jackets were warm, and second-hand furniture held up, and the things that actually mattered didn't come from a dealership. But Zoe wanted to see the fancy cars. And Marcus had realized, driving to school that morning, that maybe it was time, not for himself, for her. So she'd know that her father worked hard, that hard work became something, that someday she'd understand the whole story. He pulled into Harman Prestige Auto at 11:15, parked the 10-year-old pickup truck at the edge of the lot, took Zoe's hand, walked in. The showroom smelled like money, leather conditioner and climate control, and the particular silence of a space where everything costs more than most people earn in a month. Zoe looked around with wide eyes, her sneaker toe dragging lightly on the polished concrete. Bradley Harman materialized in the way salespeople do. Sudden, smiling, evaluating in the half-second before the smile reached his eyes. "Welcome in. Looking for anything in particular today?" Marcus looked around calmly. "Maybe, just getting a feel." Bradley's smile held. His eyes did a quick, practiced pass, jacket, jeans, truck through the window, the child. A read. A calculation. "Of course. Take your time. If you have questions about any of the display models, I'm happy to help." A pause. "We do have some certified pre-owned options toward the back. Might be a good starting point." The pre-owned section. In a dealership full of new inventory. Directed there before he'd asked a single question. Marcus nodded once. "I'll look around." Bradley smiled. Turned back toward his office, said something to Derek at low volume. Derek didn't bother suppressing the sound this time. It wasn't a laugh, exactly, more a breath that meant the same thing. Claire, at the front desk, stared at her computer screen. Zoe tugged Marcus's sleeve, pointing at a silver sedan on a raised platform. "Daddy, that one." "That's a good one," he agreed. "Can we sit in it?" He glanced toward the showroom floor. A salesperson, younger, early 30s, name tag reading Tom, was already walking toward them with a different posture than Bradley's. Open, not performing. "Hi there," Tom said, crouching slightly to address Zoe directly. "You like this one?" "It's shiny," she said with authority. "It's very shiny," Tom agreed. He looked up at Marcus. "Tom Reeves. Can I show you two around?" Marcus, and yes, you can. Tom showed them everything without condescension, which Marcus noticed. He answered Zoe's questions. "Why is this button here? What's this for? Can the seats go all the way flat?" With the patience of someone who genuinely liked kids, or genuinely understood that kids were the actual decision-makers in most family purchases, or both. Marcus let Zoe do most of the talking for the first 20 minutes. He was looking at the lot, all of it, making calculations of his own. Then Bradley appeared again. He'd been watching from the edge of his office. Something in the conversation's length, maybe, or Tom's easy posture, had pulled him back out. "Everything going okay out here?" Bradley addressed Tom, not Marcus. "Great," Tom said. "Mr. Cole's been looking at the S-Class and the excellent, you know, we're running a weekend promotion on our certified pre-owned fleet." Bradley smiled at Marcus. "Might be more in line with what you're looking for." The second mention of pre-owned. The second calculation. The second assumption made out loud. Marcus turned to look at Bradley directly. Let the silence sit for a moment. I appreciate that, Marcus said. I was actually wondering about the lot itself. Bradley's smile held but went slightly fixed. I'm sorry, the full lot. What are we looking at, inventory-wise? Floor value? A beat. I'm not sure how many units? Total retail value of current inventory. Marcus said it the same way he'd once asked for a meeting agenda. Pleasantly, specifically, Bradley looked at him, at the jacket, at the truck outside. Sir, our inventory fluctuates, but we're typically in the range of... He named a number. Marcus nodded slowly, like someone confirming information he already had. What if, Marcus said, I wanted to talk to you about all of it? Bradley's expression didn't fully break, but it fractured, somewhere around the eyes. All of, I'm not sure I follow. Zoe was still in the silver sedan, pressing buttons. Tom was watching the exchange with a very careful expression that wasn't quite a smile. We can sit down if that's easier, Marcus said. They sat down. Bradley's office had glass walls. From her perch in the sedan, Zoe could see her father sit across from a man in a pressed shirt and watch the man's expression change in stages. The way a map changes when you zoom out. First one thing, then something much, much larger. Marcus slid his phone across the desk. The account summary was open. Bradley looked at it. His mouth moved slightly, not making sound. I'd like to talk terms, Marcus said. For the lot. Or as much of it as makes sense. I have 3 properties I'm furnishing and I was going to go through an auction house. But driving by here this morning I thought it might be simpler to deal directly. Bradley stared at the phone, at the number. He picked it up, put it back down. Mr. Cole, I apologize if my team made you feel. Your team was fine, Marcus said. Tom was excellent. He glanced through the glass. I'd like Tom to handle the paperwork, if that's all right. Bradley opened his mouth, closed it. Of course, he said. His voice had gone careful. The way voices go when the calculation is finished and come back with the wrong answer. Great, Marcus stood. I'll bring Zoe in. She's going to want the silver one for the main house. He walked back out to the showroom floor. Through the glass behind him, Claire had stopped pretending to look at her computer screen. Derek had gone very still. Bradley sat at his desk with his hands flat on the surface, looking at a phone that was no longer there. Tom was leaning against the sedan when Marcus came back. His expression was careful in a different way now, like someone trying not to grin. So, Tom said quietly. So, Marcus agreed. Let's get started. What happened next moved quickly, in the way that things move quickly when numbers have weight, and weight creates gravity. Marcus bought 7 vehicles that afternoon. The silver sedan Zoe had chosen first. 3 fleet units for his properties. A truck to replace the 10-year-old one. 2 more that made operational sense on paper, and that Zoe approved aesthetically, which Marcus had decided was equally important. Tom handled every piece of it with steady, unhurried competence. He asked the right questions. He didn't hover. At one point he brought Zoe a water bottle and a notepad and a pen, and she sat in the back of the silver sedan, writing what she told Marcus was the list of all the good things today, which she did not share, but which Marcus was fairly certain included Gerald the rabbit, the shiny car, and lunch, which they had in the dealership's small lounge area, because the paperwork took time, and Zoe was hungry. Bradley Harmon came out once, in the middle of it, tried to re-enter the conversation with a kind of late-arriving warmth, the sort of charm that salespeople deploy when the stakes become visible. Marcus listened politely, declined to reassign Tom as his contact person. Bradley retreated. Claire from the front desk, who had overheard everything from the beginning, brought Zoe a dealership pen with a logo on it. Zoe accepted it gravely, added it to her list. At 4:15 p.m., Marcus signed the last document. Tom shook his hand, held it a moment longer than a professional handshake required. "I want to say something," Tom said. "You didn't have to keep me on this. You treated my daughter like a person," Marcus said. "That's it. That's the whole reason." Tom nodded, said nothing else. Which was the right response. Word travels fast in closed ecosystems. By Monday morning, Bradley Harmon's manager, the regional director, a man named Greg Pollock, who had not been in the building Saturday but had received a very detailed report of the transaction by end of business, was on a call that Bradley described to Derek afterward as uncomfortable. The word pre-owned came up several times. The phrase first impression protocol came up more. By Wednesday, Bradley had been reassigned from floor manager to a back-office inventory role, while the dealership's sales director conducted what Greg called a culture review. Derek, who had been present for both the sideways look and the quiet laugh at the beginning of Saturday, and whose name appeared in the incident account that Tom had quietly submitted to HR, received a formal written reminder about conduct standards. He had not, until that moment, understood that Tom had written anything down at all. Claire, who had submitted nothing and said nothing and had simply watched, received a note of thanks from Marcus forwarded through the dealership's general contact form. It said, "The woman at the front desk was kind to my daughter. Please let her know." Claire read it twice, printed it, kept it in her desk drawer. Some things are small enough to matter. 3 weeks later, Marcus woke at 5:15 again, but this time he sat at the kitchen table and didn't look at the folded paper. Because the specialist appointment had gone well, better than well, the kind of well that changes the texture of the next few months from hard to manageable. He sat with his coffee, which was warm this time, and listened to the house. The hinge on Zoe's door was fixed. He'd gotten to it. Her sneakers were new. Purple, which she had specified in writing. She was going through a phase of formalizing preferences in writing, which Marcus found both funny and understandable. The silver sedan sat in the driveway. He still drove the new truck most days. But on Saturdays, sometimes, he let Zoe choose. She appeared at the top of the stairs. Pajamas with yellow stars, washed enough times to be soft. Gerald the rabbit. The logo pen from the dealership, which she was still carrying. "Daddy, hey, Bug, are we doing something today?" He thought about it. Outside, the morning was clear. Somewhere across town, Tom Reeves was probably getting ready for another Saturday on a showroom floor, treating each person who walked through the door the same way, which was the only way that actually worked even when nobody was watching. Especially when nobody was watching. "Yeah," Marcus said. "We're doing something." "What?" He stood up, poured her a glass of orange juice, set it on the table. "Your call," he said. She thought about it with full seriousness, the diplomat at work. Then she looked up. "Can we go somewhere with a lot of shiny things?" He smiled. It reached all the way up. "We can do that."